Hello world, I am Curtis Simpson and this is Jectives Typography News. Today we're going to be talking about the Eventbrite Rebrand. I have 3 new typefaces for you, one of which is free to download for a limited time. And lastly, we'll finish off with a preview of an upcoming Jectives book review. Our top story today is the Eventbrite Rebrand. This was done by Buck, but we're going to start out here on Eventbrite's Instagram because I think it gives you the fastest vibe check for the brand. You can see that they've deleted all of their old posts. They've just got 10 posts on here now. And you can get a feel for what the brand is. You can see the new logo up here. But they no longer have just the basic orange E in a circle. So if we jump over to Buck, we can see a quick video here. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but I'll just let you kind of get a feel for it. This is the new the app. You can see some of the new colors and stuff here. And there really is quite a bit of a different vibe to it. They still have, more or less the same orange. It's a little bit brighter, I think. But the basic premise for the rebrand was that during 2020, everybody was stuck inside, stuck doing, Zoom meetings and stuff like that. And they wanted to connect with people. So Eventbrite wanted to rebrand in a way that demonstrated a more human connection than just a digital connection. And I do think if we're just looking at the 2 logos playing back to back here, I do think that they did a really good job, especially with the typography and with the little icon there too, but especially with the typography and making this feel much more human. I didn't find anything necessarily wrong with this old logo. It does look a little dated now, but if the goal is to become less digital, less mechanical, less with AI now, or even more of this artificial feeling, these perfect circles or these, optically perfect circles here, this very geometric typeface, it's not very human, right? It's very mechanical. It's very digital. Whereas if you look at the new one here, this is Founders Grotesque. It's much more human. It's much more natural. It's, it's still a typeface. It's still a font, but it feels much less mechanical and much more real in terms of like humans versus machines than the old logo or the old typeface. Sorry, it is the old word mark, so it is a logo, but we're specifically talking about the fonts here. So I'm going to scroll through this pretty quick because I think by now you're probably getting the gist of what's happening here. We can see a little bit of Founders Grotesque right here. Going to get into something kind of unique about this, or at least mildly interesting. But it looks great. The new font, the new typeface, it looks great. They get into their strategy here. They did introduce some new colors. So if you saw before, Eventbrite was basically white and orange. Now they've got all these new colors included. I think they're calling this one like Neon Bright. They've got a few different shades of yellow they're using. I thought that this was one of the most telling pages. So they've got this pitch deck on here, this presentation that I don't think we're really supposed to look into too in depth. But if you look at this one right here, it says we lack differentiation. And they've got the other apps here. It says compared to other brands in their category. So they've got other brands on here. The only one I recognize actually is Meetup, but you can see Eventbrite in terms of differentiation. There are plenty of apps that can do what Eventbrite does. I have, I think the most of my experiences in terms of events and stuff have been with Eventbrite. So I don't have much experience with the other ones, but I do understand there's not much of a moat around these things. Anybody can kind of do this. It just depends who is setting up the events. So creating more of an emotional connection to the app is a very smart thing to do. So you can see, here's a good example here. So they're going from a functional ticket to an emotional ticket. Personally, I would prefer the functional one. I like the nice clean aesthetic. I like the typography, but I 100% understand why they're going with the emotional branding. Typography is the same on both though. Here's some more signage and stuff like that. They're talking about the logo. When I first saw this logo, honestly, it reads more like an M than an E to me, but the Nike logo means nothing. It means what we imbue upon it. So eventually people will associate this little lightning bolt type E with the brand. You can see though that even though there are these unique illustrations and 3D, and they've got a very specific like photography that they're trying to go for, it's much more of like an amateur style photography. This could be shot for Instagram or for social media or something. You know, it looks like a real photo, not like a staged photo. That's what they're going for this more authentic feel rather than like the corporate computerized digital feel. I'll just make a quick note here, unrelated to typography. I don't necessarily think it's a great move when brands do this. Do I think it's great for the aesthetic of your iPhone? Sure, like change the color of your app icon. But brands need to be associated with a specific color. So I say associate Eventbrite with orange. I think the three orange icons make sense, but including every color in the palette. Like if you see a green icon, do you necessarily associate it with Eventbrite anymore? Like if Coca-Cola let you change their icon to a blue, green, orange, pink icon, maybe it looks cooler on your home screen, but it's not necessarily Coca-Cola anymore, right? I don't know. Here are all the new colors though. I think that's a great color palette. It's a very big color palette, as we just saw, but I think they work well together. It's fun. It's fun. Jectives, you know, we're mostly worried about typography here, and you can see, despite all of the colors, despite all the photography, Eventbrite is still very much a typography-driven app, website, platform, whatever you want to call it. So they're going to talk about the photography and things like that. They're going to talk about how they're amplifying the brand with these headers and the illustrations and the energetic aura gradients. But it all comes down to typography in the end, because these look great. But when you're in the app, which we're going to get to, I think we're at the bottom of this. Once you're in the app, you're not seeing any of that anymore, right? Here's the new app. They do they do integrate some of the colors and things like that, but this is typically what you're looking at when you're thinking about Eventbrite. It's other people's crappy photos that they put on here. You know, everyone makes an event photo that they're going to put on there, and it really comes down to just the typeface that Eventbrite decides to use. And that was actually the screen that pops up whenever you first start the app. When you start the new app, you'll see the old logo first, and then you'll see the new logo. So I think that's pretty clever. I'm not going to watch another video though. You can see they do integrate some of these brand elements into pieces of the app, but this is why typography is so important, because when you're scrolling through the app, it's all text. It's all text. So let's look at the typeface that Eventbrite is using now. It is Founders Grotesque. The interesting thing about Founders Grotesque is that it was created by Kilm Type Foundry. And Kilm Type Foundry also created Cash Sans. Cash Sans, if you remember from last week, was the typeface that Cash App rebranded with. And you can see right here our typeface, and you can see it was also created by the Kilm Type Foundry. So clearly they are a dominant force in typography right now, particularly for these large brands that need a workhorse typeface. Just come back to Founders Grotesque, and we can take a little bit of a closer look. I'm not going to read through everything like usual, but you can download the test fonts. I think that's really cool. I did download them and play around with them a little bit. They only give you 3 weights. Of course, you're not going to get everything for free, and you shouldn't use it for anything other than testing purposes. But I think they give you regular, medium, and bold, which is enough to kind of look at it and get a feel for it. This is why a typeface like this is so important for a big brand like Eventbrite, or even like we looked at last week with Cash App, is that, you know, you've got Founders Grotesque, then you've got the condensed version, then you've got the extra condensed version, the text, which is going to be great for bigger bodies of text and look good at small sizes. Mono. There's always some time that you're going to need a monospace font. And if you don't have one built into your typeface, your type family, then you got to go find one that pairs well. It's just so convenient when you have a font that works right out of the gate. So that is the Eventbrite rebrand. I think that they did a really good job with it. I think that a lot of the imagery and the colors and the illustrations and things, they look awesome on a screen like this. And there will be instances where you interact with the brand in these situations. But I don't think that it's a subjective opinion to say the typography is the most important when it comes to an app like Eventbrite. So I think it's great that they chose Founders Grotesque from Klim Type Foundry. Clearly, it's going to be a solid workhorse font for them, and it serves the purpose of becoming demonstrating a much more human feel. We looked at the two logos side by side, and the new one, the new font, the new typeface looks much more human than the geometric sans serif. Next up, we have our three brand new fonts, and I love to come out swinging. The first one here is Dual Casual by DualType. As you can see, this is a very casually lettered typeface. It's inspired by hand-painted signs, and I think that it's incredibly accurate and it's incredibly cool. Don't get scared off by the $75 price tag because I do think that it's well worth it. It's a surprisingly deep typeface if you need this particular aesthetic. You can see right here, it's a variable font, which is awesome. It's got two different variations on it, in terms of the width or the weight of it and the slant of it. But when you get into some of these type specimens, you can really see what it's achieving here. And like I said, if you need this aesthetic, I have not seen a better font that does hand lettering brushwork like this. One of the most interesting aspects about Dual Casual, in my opinion, is the story. If you've been around, you know that I love a good typeface, but even more, I love a great type story. And this is 10 years in the making. He goes back from 2015 with his first idea for it, and he shows you the original typefaces, and he points out that his ambitions were greater than his skills at that time. But this journal entry, which I'll have linked in the description, it really reminds me of that Childish Gambino line where he says, "I guess it all goes somewhere, you know that?" Like, he's talking about writing a song about Rashida Jones and then using that story to put into lyrics for the song that he's singing in that moment. But that line really stuck with me, and I think that it's demonstrated here where, like, sometimes you work on something, and it feels like a waste, and then later on you end up coming back to it and you just have this amazing accomplishment, or at least, you have this thing that becomes greater than all of the work that you put into it, and it becomes better than anything that you could have imagined in the beginning. So I'm sure when he started out with this typeface here in 2015, it was kind of cool, I guess, but I don't think that 10 years ago he was imagining what it was going to become. Just going to give a quick peek at the DualType Instagram. You can see a little bit of Dual Casual on there, but what I think is even more interesting is Jen Ramirez, his personal Instagram, because you can go back and you can see before this was published, and you can see him working on it. You can see some of these things, this is from November of last year, and you can see him working through some of the different weights and things like that. And I love these here because it really does feel like the signs that you see in the street. I'm living in Brazil right now, moved here from Las Vegas, so we didn't necessarily have a ton of these signs, but in Curitiba, where I'm living, I see signs like this every day. So that's going to be Dual Casual by DualType. It is available to purchase on futurefonts.xyz. And I mentioned this in the last episode, but this is version 0.1, and it says in progress. What this means, the same thing as the typeface we looked at last week from Martha Sue Corsi. If you buy this now for $75, you're going to get the updates. So this version, it tells you what it's including right here, but it's going to have more language support, more symbols, better kerning. This is already a very, very complete typeface. Sometimes in future fonts, you get fonts that aren't fully developed in the price tag. The fonts are priced accordingly. But with Dual Casual, you're getting a real heavy hitter, and I think it's worth checking out. Our second brand new font today is Teletext by Maxitype. Teletext is actually a font revival from one of the greats, Adrian Fruediger, and this isn't just like a quick revival. They didn't just copy the letters and spit out a font. This is a real deep font, and it had to be developed quite a bit because his original typeface only had the capital letters. This webpage is going to talk about how the font was created. Here, we can read this line right here. Teletext is a humanist pixel typeface designed by Adrian Fruediger in 1979 for the new CDG Paris Charles de Gaulle Airport screens and was released by Maxitype in 2025. Basically, they went into the archives and they found this typeface that was created for the screens. It was only used for a few years, and then screens got better and they could use a different typeface. But it just had basically the uppercase letters. There were no lowercase. But if we look at this blue section here, there's some little buttons we can click here. And you can see, if you look at the 1979 here, you can see that the 7's changing. So you can change up some of the letters in here. You can see the M is changing a little bit there. But this isn't just like a display font. Yes, it is a display font. It's a display typeface. But it's a very well crafted one that I think could honestly be used as an entire brand typeface. Like this could be your brand typeface because it is that strong. If the aesthetic of your brand, required this. One thing I think is really cool is they're showing, this typical type specimen stuff. They're showing this at 48.2420, but they're actually telling the story of how this font was developed. So I'll link this in the description. Go check it out. I think that the story is really, really cool. But this font is great. You can see, I love the specimens too. I just think they're so accurate. You can imagine this being on, everybody's seen that blue screen with the old pixel font on it. But I just think they've done an incredible job presenting this and even more incredible job designing this. Because they really took just like this small piece of a typeface designed by, admittedly, one of the best type designers, that has existed to date. But they turned it into something much, much bigger. I'm going to open up Affinity Designer because Maxitype actually lets you download the trial fonts. So you can't use this for any commercial purposes. Don't even use it for personal ones, but you can use it to test out. So here we have the typeface right here, and you can set it to thin, you can set it to light, you can set it to regular, and you can set it to bold. But what's even cooler is this is a variable font. So you can change this incrementally, and look what they do. They're making the lines thicker and thicker until they actually connect. So the typeface itself, it's not thinner in the sense that we normally think of, but those like sort of like CRT lines, that you remember from playing old Sega or Nintendo games. Those lines get thicker until the typeface gets a heavier weight. So if you're zoomed out, you've got some other fonts on here that we were looking at. But if we were zoomed out, it's a much lighter font when you are at those lighter weights. So you can get all the way heavier to the bold. This is what I think is particularly cool. And I think that they've done a really great job, especially compared to a typeface like Base Pixel that we looked at last week, a different pixelated font. They had a variable font, but it was nothing compared to this, because look at how elegant this is when you're going from, the regular weight. Let's go ahead and put this on regular. When you're going from the regular weight and you want to make the font bolder, there's no janky transitions. Everything just smoothly gets a little bit bigger. Even if you go back to the lines, when we're going down to those thin weights, these lines are so smooth. It's just, I don't know that I've ever seen a better pixel font than Teletext by Maxitype. And if we scroll down to the bottom of the Maxitype page, you will see that this font is appropriately priced for being the best pixel font that you've probably ever seen. It's not cheap, but I do think that, again, similar to Dual Casual, if it's a typeface that you need for that aesthetic, if you need this sort of CRT pixel font, I've never seen anything better or more current. We're living in an age where there are a lot of old pixel fonts, but none of them are going to be variable fonts to the degree that Teletext is. So it's expensive, but I think if this is what you need, it's definitely one of the best options out there. Let's go in the opposite direction for this last one. We went from, increasingly more expensive typefaces. $3.99, Be in Attica. This is Brandon Nickerson. He's putting out free fonts all the time. If you miss out on this one, because this is for a limited time, during the launch window, it'll be free. But if you miss out on this one, Go to his Instagram. If you follow him on Instagram, he's always posting when there are free fonts. If you catch these when they're free, even better though is to sign up for his newsletter. If you sign up for his newsletter, you won't have to worry about the algorithm not showing you when a font gets released. You'll just be able to get the email from Brandon directly, and then you can catch these amazing typefaces. Like I said, prices generally match the quality or at least the quantity of what you're going to be getting. So this is a great looking display font, but there's not a whole lot to it. I'll show you that in a second. But I think that, especially for free, this looks incredible. And Brandon Nickerson, he's always putting out great typefaces. Like I said, you can scroll through his catalog, even if you miss the sales or the free giveaways, basically. All of his fonts are very reasonably priced. So definitely worth checking out. Definitely worth subscribing to the newsletter. Let's go ahead and scroll through the rest of these. Look how nice these are, though. He puts out really great type specimens, too. He's great at displaying his fonts. Some people are great at creating fonts. Some people are great at marketing. Other people like Brandon Nickerson are pretty great at both. And you can see these are all of the characters that you're going to get with the font. I was going to open this up in Infinity too and show you the glyphs, but I think this does a much better job. You can see it all at once. So there are some alternatives. So you can see particularly, I'm not sure what these are. I can't tell the difference right here just looking at this specimen. But you've got some variation with the B's, the D's, the H's, the K's. I don't know what they are. Maybe there aren't, and he's just filling up the space. But like I said, for $0 and 0 cents, go pick this up right now. I will leave a link in the description, but this is on Brandon Nickerson's website. And make sure you subscribe to the newsletter so you don't miss out on the next one if you did miss out on this one. So that's all the news that I have for you today, but I do have one more thing I want to talk about, and that is the next book review. The next book review is going to be on Designing Type by Karen Chang. This is the second edition. I have previously read the first edition a couple of times, but as I mentioned in this video and other ones, I recently moved to Brazil from Las Vegas, so I don't have any of my books here. Any books that I am covering are books that I've had to purchase again. So this is going to be the next review, Designing Type. It was specifically kindly requested in the comments of the Grid Systems book review if I could cover Designing Type. And like I said, I've read the first edition, so I have a good idea about what the book's about, but this gives me a great excuse to buy the second edition. It came out in 2020. The first came out in 2005, so a lot has changed in font technology since then. So I'm interested to see how she goes about that, how she presents things. I've already noticed some changes that I point out during the review, but the reason I'm bringing it up now is because if you have specific questions related to this book, go ahead and leave them in the comments of this video so that I can cover them when I do the book review. Likewise, if you have a book that you would like me to review on the channel, go ahead and leave a comment, and I might just do it because a viewer asked for this book last week, and we're going to have a book review on it very, very soon. So that's going to do it for the second episode of Typography News. This has been Jectives. I am Curtis Simpson, and I will see you in the next one.